success experience is really critical for learning, and anything an instructor can do to give students that experience is very important.
It'll pay off.
Again, giving feedback to correct them so that they don't learn the wrong movement is not a good thing, or continuously correcting something. People want to feel successful, and as Rebecca mentioned earlier, when people have a chance to ask for feedback, they choose feedback when they thought they had a good shot, just to confirm that they did well and to get this confidence. So there are many different ways.
And the more successful they feel, the more likely they are to seek out more detailed feedback about what they do differently. Yes. So they just need that platform of, I can do this.
Golf Smarter, number 853. Their research shows that thinking about the mechanics during your golf swing doesn't help. With Doctors Gabrielle Wolf and Rebecca Luthwaite.
This is Golf Smarter, sharing stories, tips, and insights from great golf minds to help you lower your score and raise your golf IQ. Here's your host, Fred Green.
Welcome to the Golf Smarter Podcast, Gabby.
Thank you, Fred. Thanks for having us.
Oh, absolutely. And Rebecca, welcome to the Golf Smarter Podcast.
Yeah.
Today is going to be an interesting topic because it's been motivated by a listener who is studying your stuff. He's been asking a lot of questions about movement, about thought during movement, and you are both, instructors, professors of kinesiology and nutrition science at UNLV and USC, among other places. And you have this fascinating report called Translating Thoughts into Action, Optimizing Motor Performance and Learning Through Brief Motivational and Attentional Influences. I know the audience right now is riveted. But basically, we need to explain to golfers that maybe they're thinking about the wrong things when they're thinking about what they're doing and focusing on the wrong movement. Where do we start with this? Who wants to begin?
Okay, I'll give it a try.
Thank you, Gabby.
So you just gave the title of one of the many papers we have written in the last few years. Actually, the original paper, so to speak, that this goes back to is a theory paper. We published a motor learning theory in 2016. And we identified three conditions that are important if someone wants to perform movement skills well and learn them well. So this theory has a lot of implications for not just performers, athletes, but also instructors, such as golf instructors, but anybody who teaches movement skills, really. So we can talk about these three factors that are important for learning and immediate performance.
Yes, please.
May I just say to help the audience, we call this theory optimal, which stands for optimizing performance through intrinsic motivation and attention for learning. So optimal, and the case becomes, how do you optimize the state of the performer before they go out and try to achieve what they're working on? And so there are these three factors that Gabby was about to talk about that help people get into an optimal state for performance.
Yes, thank you for reminding me of the title of our theory. Yes. So let's talk about a so-called external focus of attention first, perhaps, because this is, I think, the longest line of research. I initiated this line of research about 20 years ago. And what we've found back then is that, whenever somebody thinks about their own movements while they're performing or preparing, say, to hit a golf ball, it's detrimental. So we call that an internal focus of attention, anything directed to body movements, be it your arms, wrists, hips, shoulders, whatever. So we have known for 20 years that this is not a good thing to do. Instead, one should really focus externally, meaning one should concentrate, think about the intended effect of the movement. So in golf, that could be the golf club. It could be the ball, hitting it solidly. It could be the intended trajectory of the ball, the target or the hole.
Or a place on the green that you want to hit in order to get to the hole.
Yes, so that's an external focus of attention. And again, over the past 20 years, hundreds of studies have been performed and confirmed our original findings that an external focus is better than an internal focus on body movements.
There are some people who have been doing it well because they've been focused on, I want to hit that place on the green, or I want to have a certain trajectory on this shot. So and pretty much anybody from time to time gets that focus. But we all fall out of it and we start thinking about what kind of micromanagement we need for our body part to make that outcome happen. So yes, we have been there, all of us, but what we're trying to do is systematize getting into the right state, which is that external focus in this case.
So a lot of teachers will have you focus on, keep your left wrist, keep your left arm straight, make sure that your hips turn. There's so many different body parts. And what you're saying is your study is showing is for amateurs, for people who are not highly skilled at this, that's the wrong focus?
That's correct. It's the wrong focus. It's the wrong instruction. Maybe so blunt, yes.
And
not just
why?
amateurs, actually anybody. This is
really
a principle. It
Yeah,
applies
experts too.
Any human, experts too. Yes.
The why about it is because when you think about, okay, I got to have my elbow here and my wrist this way and that way, you're having to sequentially sort of manage your system. And the system doesn't really work like that. It has a goal, and it kind of implicitly goes on the pathways in the brain to achieve that goal. But if you break it down, then you're micromanaging, so to speak, and it's not going to be very fluid. So it's because thinking about little pieces of the puzzle doesn't help you achieve the puzzle. But knowing that it looks like a horse in the end will help your body achieve the horse-like situation.
I see. You mentioned the word fluid in there. Let's dig deeper into fluidity and being fluid for the golf swing.
One thing you see when you adopt an external focus is there are fewer contractions, fewer co-contractions. So
of muscles.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So the body kind of knows what it has to do to produce a certain movement, and it does it very efficiently if you just focus on the intended, outcome of the action. And many studies have looked at muscle activation patterns and found that there's less activation in certain muscles and less activation in the antagonists, the opposing muscles. And that contributes to, movements being more fluid. But you also see different activation patterns in the brain.
Yeah, so, people who are very skilled at something don't kind of run around their brains before they begin their movement sequence. They just, boom, go to the place they need to go. Their brain takes them there. The goal takes them there. So, you can imagine that, an antelope trying to escape a predator does not think, quick, extend the knee. They think, get to the other side of this crevice so that you're safe. And so, we really operate better when that's what we think about, the end state, the target for what we're trying to do. The brain has to pull all kinds of information. So it's better if you let it take over implicitly as long as you put the goal in mind.
Okay, we're getting somewhere. I'm starting to absorb this, but I want to take a time out, and we'll be back right after this word. This episode of Golf Smarter is brought to you by PXG Golf Clubs. PXG makes world-class, high-performance golf equipment for golfers of every skill level. From their newest, most technologically advanced Gen 5 golf clubs to the more budget-friendly 0211 line of sticks, PXG delivers unbelievable quality, distance, forgiveness, and feel. No matter your skill level, PXG has a full bag deal for you. Their flagship full bag offers include 14 clubs, PXG lightweight carry stand bag, head covers, and a hat. How can they do this and stay competitive with their pricing? PXG doesn't sell off the shelf. Every club is customized to fit your individual swing. If you've been in the market for clubs recently, you've probably been told that either A, they should arrive in a few months, or B, we're not exactly sure when you'll get them, but we'll call you when they arrive. Not with PXG. No shipping delays. They will ship your order in a week or less. So if you're curious, go for it and buy online at pxg.com or call 844-PLAY-PXG, or of course, visit a PXG store or fitting studio near you. PXG. Nobody makes golf clubs the way they do, period. Rebecca, the thing that comes to mind is that golf is, it seems to all be in our head versus being a reactive sport like basketball, baseball, where you have to react to the action. So you really, and a lot of times you don't have time to think about it. Where golf is, that's all you end up doing is thinking about the last one and the next one. Like, what did I do wrong on the last shot that I had? What movement did I do wrong? Oh, I know I lifted my head or I bent my elbow or anything. So you get kind of stuck in your head about what you're thinking about. And what you're saying is avoid this.
Yes, you're trying to find the state of mind that lets you, not influence your shot by knowing that there's water on the right. You basically want to say, hey, look, it's a straight line to that target, to that green. So don't worry about the fact there's water on the left or the right. So really you have to clear your mind of all the junk that comes in after the last shot, after, last round, all of that. You want to clear your mind. And you want to come to a place where your mind is set up for a positive move that can achieve the goal. So that's really, you're trying to seek that place. And we talked about this external focus. So, for example, people could achieve that external focus, and there's no one right one. There are multiple ones throughout your round. So, at one point in time, Tiger Woods talked about making sure his belt buckle was at the target as he turned. That's a very straightforward external focus. Mm-hmm. And then comes some time when maybe after an injury, people are particularly likely to bring some of the muscle and form thoughts into their mind as they're trying to return to play. So that's a time you definitely want to say, wait, not going there anymore, and focus on where you are going. So, there are very simple ways to get an external focus. And if you're a beginner, the optimal external focus might end up being the ball and club, contact. When you're more experienced, you're thinking about where am I heading this shot and what trajectory am I going to do? But they're all external. So,
yeah, go ahead.
So that's one component, I guess, of trying to get into that optimal state is just put the goal in mind and get rid of the how-tos.
Yeah.
Actually, I was going to, sorry, Fred. I was going to say,
go ahead, Gabby.
You made an interesting point about having time to think. And I think that's one of the challenges of golf,
Too much time.
You have too much time to think. And one thing that humans do is they think about the movement. They think about what to do with their body parts. It's really hard to avoid that. Or they focus, they are insecure. They are, worried about their last shot and not doing it well this time. And so these worries, anything that makes you think about yourself, any self-related thought is detrimental. We have known that for a long time. So the challenge is really to avoid those self-foci, internal foci, and really try to focus on the task goal.
So
right. Seems to be a tremendous amount of fear, I would say, in your shots, and what's going to happen, what could happen, how, I guess this is the $1 trillion question, how do you prevent this? How do you not think about these things? How do you get to that external focus?
So I think one thing is to bring in the two other factors that we talk about, because they are helping you achieve a positive motivational state of mind. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, then it's easy to just focus on the goal. So the two motivational factors that we talk about optimizing have to do with providing yourself, or if you're an instructor, providing your pupils with just a small opportunity to make a choice or to have some autonomy in the situation. Now you might think, how could that help? We think that it has to do with kind of giving the brain a little flexibility. It helps us switch modes, and that's what we need to do when we come up to a new shot. Turn off the last thing and be able to switch to the front thing. So just a little opportunity for choice, even if it's when teaching, which kind of instructional aid do you want to use? A rod on the ground, or, do we want to turn a metronome on, or do we want to get a reading of our, shot speed? We make those choices. They're little choices. And it's not the content of the choice that matters. It's giving your brain a little choice. Are
you saying it's a distraction?
No,
you're looking for distraction?
It's a reset of it allows the brain to switch gears. Okay. We talk about it as facilitating switching between where you're thinking. So it's not a distraction. It's a little mechanism for the brain to go to the next thing. So you want to free it up so that it can go forward and not kind of be hung back where you were evaluating what you did.
Right.
So that's one thing. Give yourself a little choice.
Yeah, and as I was reading this, I got kind of stuck on autonomy. I wasn't exactly sure what you were trying to instruct me with autonomy. So let's dig into that a little deeper.
Okay.
Back to your question, Fred, you asked, how do you get to that external focus, right? How do you switch off the self-related thoughts? And, I think one thing is people need to know that an external focus is better, that they need to avoid these self-related thoughts. That's one thing, just the information is knowing this. But also, speaking of autonomy, often what I do is when I use the same iron for too long, I just switch clubs, and that provides this kind of reset. I decide to use a different club, and it usually goes better after that. I'm able to, get rid of these concerns about this club and not doing so well. I just start with a new one.
I give you the driving range, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
Something relatively simple, people change putters all the time.
Yeah.
One of the things, that little choice, like which one do I want to bring to the course today, is a little choice. But as they get up to the tee, they also have choices about, okay, do I want to take this over the trees on the left and try to cut off the dog leg? Or do I want to just make the more less risky choice and just take an iron, put it in the middle of the fairway? So that's a choice that people make before shots, but there could be really small choices. And they could be very, very small choices, and also almost incidental or trivial, if you will. I'm trying to think of one right now.
You know what? Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say is I can imagine being behind the ball, looking down the fairway, going, okay, my choice is I want to put it in the fairway. I'm not thinking about the trees on the left or the water on the right. I'm just focused on, looking towards the middle of the fairway. And then I step up to the ball. Now, all of a sudden, that thought has disappeared because I'm looking down at the ball going, I just want to hit the ball well. I just want to come down on it. I just want to, make sure that I hit the divot in front of the ball as opposed to behind it.
Right.
So and again, I come back to distractions, and that's not a choice I want to make.
Right. The distractions kind of sound undisciplined, if you will. It's like I'm letting my mind wander and go anywhere. I'm just going to an alternative that I've chosen. Uh-huh. And so it lets me, kind of continue bringing all the pieces together in my mind that have to come for my body to come together. So in a way, it's systematic, and you are trying to put yourself into this state of being free and flexible enough to then focus on your new goal. So if you had to make a choice, okay, I could take it over the trees on the left, or I could hit a simple shot in the middle of the fairway. Won't go as far, but I can make that choice. And then that is a choice that frees you up. And then your next thing is your external focus. Okay, I'm going to go for that line against this tree. Go for the palm tree,
This issue of autonomy is also something that's relevant for golf instruction, right? So, for instance, if you think about feedback, golf instructors give a lot of feedback, right? And oftentimes it's external, internal in nature, that's related to body parts. But aside from that, instructors in general often give feedback when they think it's necessary. So one thing that many studies have shown is that if you let the learner, the performer, decide when they want to get feedback about their performance, it's a lot more effective. They learn a lot more than if the instructor just chooses to give feedback anytime they think they should.
So if the instructor were to say, okay, Dave, I want, this next time, go ahead and take some shots at this target. Let me know when you want a little insight from my perspective. So then Dave says, okay, I was off that time. I think I want something. And interestingly, people ask for feedback when they think they've done well.
Oh, wow.
Because that is putting themselves, they kind of intuitively know it, I suspect. Can't say that for sure yet. But they intuitively want to place themselves in a better motivational state. A positive, rewarding kind of state of mind. Yeah. I'll give you a golf example that I found very helpful. Go ahead, Ben.
All right, and I'm gonna get that example, but we're gonna take another break. And I'm fascinated because I want to talk more about instructors and what they are equipped with and what they're not equipped with. But I want to get your story after this. So, Rebecca, I apologize for interrupting and stopping your story, but let's get back into this because I really do want to talk about what instructors can bring to the table on this and what they're not equipped with. But
so in this video that I happened to watch, this was a professional golfer, a winner of 68 tournaments, very strong professional golfer.
Sure.
And they had a strategy for warm-ups. that I think it really nicely illustrates what you're trying to do to put your mind in the best state for performance. And that is, first they warm up on the putting greens with a short putt to make it, get started for the warm-up period. They progress to a little longer putt and a little longer putt and a little longer putt. And just before they're about to go out for their round, they go back and hit a short putt. Now what that does is, first you're building confidence as you increase the length of your putts. But then before you go out, you purposefully choose a putt that you will make, so that you go out with that in your mind. So that's an example of putting yourself in a state where you have been, it's easy to think the positive, this is going to go well, because you've put yourself back and taken this short shot. If you kind of do that almost religiously, you get into the system of putting your mind in the best motivational state, along with the choices you make. So that was a choice to do that. It's also, you've built up confidence. So that helps you achieve the optimal external focus, because it frees your mind up from thinking all these negative thoughts. You're more in control of your mind. You go to that place.
Yeah, so that what Rebecca just explained is really, how you achieve confidence. And confidence actually happens to be the third important factor in our theory. So aside from an external focus and autonomy, confidence is really critical for optimal performance. And, this was one example of how that can be achieved by the performer themselves, but also, instructors need to be aware of the fact that I think confidence is critical.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, playing with confidence is a completely different game.
It's golden.
But it's, it's how do you get there and how do you sustain it is always the huge part of it. I want to ask you about instructors who aren't aware of this. Are they doing a disservice to their students by not understanding the external focus and how to gain confidence?
Well, I think it's critical that anybody who instructs other people, that they are aware of these, findings. And these three factors that we've been talking about are really have been demonstrated. So the importance of each factor has been demonstrated in so many studies. So I think it is critical that instructions promote an external focus of attention. So avoid any reference to body parts, yes. And there are different ways of doing that. Images are very helpful. So just focusing on the pendulum-like motion of the club, for example, or shirt buttons or belt buckles and so forth. So that's one thing, but also giving people choices, asking them when they want feedback, or just asking them in which order they want to use certain clubs, or what the order in which they want to use training devices. And believe it or not, having even a small choice makes people very happy. It really increases their, positive affect, as we call it, and it makes them confident. Studies have shown that as well.
Yeah. I think, everybody in hindsight could say, ooh, I was not quite doing it the right way now that we happen to know that. But, science continues to find things that are going to be helpful for this situation. So I think it's a case of just saying, am I the kind of instructor that can adopt a new approach? Because I think I am. And therefore, I'm going to give it a try. So even those who have been heavily, engaged in tying someone up in knots inadvertently, which is exactly what some people do. But there are also, if you look around and you see who the popular instructors are, they are not the people tying them up in knots. That's they're doing that in spite of that fact. They may be performing well, but in spite of it. So if they were to switch then, and even in a small way, I think they would see what would happen and it would be positive. We do it all the time with people recovering from a stroke, for example, who can't move very well at all. Well, part of it is the way they are able to control their brain. And they're not stuck if sometimes they can be helped to kind of achieve a more optimal state. And it's the same for, a really expert golfer, expert instructor. You're not stuck. You can go ahead and try something. One thing that instructors can do is choose to help frame the situation for their learner. Okay? So, for example, if I were to say, there's a target on the green, hit that, and I don't give any positive feedback about, it was pretty close, that was good, then what I've done is impose the ultimate target on somebody who may be a beginner. Mm-hmm. And so I would be better off to say, for a starter, in these first 10 shots, if you can get it within, a 3-inch radius of that hole, we'll say that's good.
Right.
And so I create this success for them early, and that fuels, we think it's dopamine in the brain that is operating, and it fuels the motor system, frees it up, and gives it the ability to connect better with speed and strength and accuracy, actually, all of those. And so that's, one of the things an instructor can do is choose to start off by creating some early success and maybe letting the performer say when they're ready to up the ante a bit. And that's a choice they've just brought into play. And it's also creating the successes that build confidence. So, that's the kind of way an instructor could start, by just kind of backing off the hypercritical place where they might, somebody really experienced might be there, but the learner is at a different place. And so they need success to fuel their system to perform best.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not easy, but, moderately challenging. And not easy to do either, if you have that sense that, I'm supposed to be kind of controlling in how this happens.
Yeah, that success experience is really critical for learning. And anything an instructor can do to give students, that experience is very important.
It'll pay off.
So again, giving feedback to correct them so that they don't learn the wrong movement, is not a good thing. Or consistently, continuously, correcting something. People want to feel successful, and as Rebecca mentioned earlier, when people have a chance to ask for feedback, they choose feedback when they thought they had a good shot, just to confirm that they did well and to, get this confidence. And so there are many different ways.
And the more successful they feel, the more likely they are to seek out more detailed feedback about what
and
they
succeed
do differently. Yes. So they just need that platform of, I can do this, so that they choose to do more, choose to take it farther, and that kind of thing.
Excellent. All right, one more quick break. We'll be right back. This week on Golf Smarter Mulligans, it's part 2 with Jim Waldron from early 2011, discussing his ideas for the book that we learned last week he never wrote, called The 15 Gates of Golf and the Keys to Unlock Them.
What the average golfer does is they try to make the club head move in a faster RPM speed than their hands. And the way they do that is they throw the club head sideways from the wrist joint, or we call that flipping, at some point in the downswing. If you do it really early, it's called early release. If you do it from the top of the backswing. They try to make their hands move past their body because they swing their arms sideways across their chest. Good players don't do that. In other words, the angle that the arms are to the chest and the angle that the club head is relative to the hands, those angles stay more or less the same until just after impact for a good player. And every Joe Average out there is trying to throw the club head past their hands try and throw their hands past their spine, across the midline of their body before impact. And the pros don't do that. The pros try to keep all those angles intact and simply unwind their body.
That's Golf Smarter Mulligans, episode number 169, with Jim Waldron of BalancePointGolf.com. Now, unless you were part of our exclusive members-only group between 2009 and 2016, then this is the first time that this episode has ever been introduced to the public. So, along with your subscription to Golf Smarter, get your weekend started with the best of Golf Smarter archives that are no longer available on any podcast app, and many of these episodes have never been heard before. That's Golf Smarter Mulligans, published every Friday from wherever you listen to this podcast. I find it fascinating that we seek out the feedback when we feel like we've done a good job. I mean, I can even think about the fact that it's like, well, I knew that was a bad shot. I don't want feedback on that. Right. That one felt good. What did I do right? Please give me feedback there.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That positive feedback is so important. Yes, highlighting the good things, not just correcting what's still not, great.
You're trying to, really fuel your brain to make good connections. And it needs the fuel of a reward in the future. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right. So is the learner overwhelmed with information? And, when they're getting this feedback, is there too much coming in generally?
I would probably say yes. Yeah. I think so. Instructors give a lot of feedback. It's often overwhelming. And then you have this problem that when you're about to hit the ball, you have all these thoughts about all the things you need to do. And it just, it's not going to result in a good outcome. You need one clear external focus, ideally, one thing to focus on. And too much feedback is detrimental.
So sometimes I don't know if it's information overload, but it's more what happens when we get all that information. Oh, I must be doing something wrong. It turns into a hypercritical situation instead of maybe an overload per se. So basically, you would like to keep the negatives out of the story if you can until, and I do think people fear that learners will just do the things they do well and they won't try something. But if you make them feel capable, then they will try the next level up and the next level up. And we see this all the time. They are engaged in getting better so that they will ask for what should I do here? And when you turn it around to them and you say, what do you think? What happened there? They say, oh, well, I did something too early, or I didn't, get my club around, or whatever it is. And so, they will seek it. They will seek to improve, but they do it off the bedrock of feeling like this is all going to be good ultimately. Mm-hmm. This is going to be rewarding.
So how, or let's put it this way, can you help us develop our own tools? What can we do if we're not taking lessons, but we want to be able to get out of our way? Mm-hmm. It sounds like that's what we're trying to do, is get out of our own way and just focus on not all the minutia that just bogs us down. Yeah. What kind of tools can we develop and how?
So there are so many possible external foci, for example, in golf. I mentioned some earlier, right? The ball, the club, the target, and so forth. You can just experiment with them. I do it all the time on the driving range. If I have to, initially I just try to focus on the trajectory, but often the trajectory is not what I wanted it to be. So I try to fix what I did wrong. So I may focus more and bring the club back further, whatever it is. I experiment with external foci all the time. So that's one thing one can do.
So that's giving yourself some choice. Mm-hmm. Essentially, to think about what you want to do.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Or like I said, you make other choices, how much you want to practice, how many balls you want to hit, or what club you want to use, and so forth. And also, again, you can give yourself some confidence too, I think. I mean, just thinking this is going to be good before you hit the ball. I found that even that has helped me, just having a positive thought.
So I think one thing you want to do is be systematic. And so we've talked about 3 factors. So in a way, you have your little mini system of getting yourself in the right confident state of mind. So I described this one thing you might do of starting and ending with something you for sure can do when you warm up. So that's a mini system that a golfer could develop. Okay, this is my go-to confidence builder. Whether they start with a certain club on the driving range and end with a certain club or on the putting green, that's their confidence builder. They know they do that really well. Then they think about, okay, what small ways could I provide myself with just a little choice here? For example, we connected with a professional musician who had to learn many different pieces and didn't have much time for rehearsal. So he would tell himself, okay, in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to work on this part of this new piece of music. Okay, yeah. So he made a choice. He knew he had to, use his time wisely. So there are those kind of ways that a golfer could choose. So all kinds of choices, small, very small work, and then an external focus. For this shot, my focus needs to be here. For this one, though, I am really going to focus on the trajectory. So it could be different for different shots, but it's a system. I'm going to say what I want and put that thought in mind and not worry about the muscles needed to make that work. So it really is, a discipline system.
And it's not, here's my thought process for my round today. It's every individual shot and not getting bogged down with the big picture.
Yeah, and I think you could choose to spend some time on strategy, on course management. I know that there are many places where there's water on this course, or I know I want to avoid this bunker. So that's a choice too. I'm going to think through how I want to manage each hole. So it could be part of the story, and I think probably the more experienced you are, the more you would go in that way.
I've asked many teachers over the years this question and have gotten a variety of answers, but I've never gotten the opportunity to ask scientists who study kinesiology and may actually have an answer for this question, which is there such a thing as muscle memory?
Oh, I'm laughing because every time in my class this term comes up. It's such a funny term to me because obviously muscles don't have memories, right?
Right.
I don't particularly like that term, but I guess everybody knows what it means, right? It refers to, automaticity, I guess, the body knowing
really
what it has to
do. The brain
do.
taking a familiar pathway. That's really what it's about. And so it's not in the muscle, it's in the brain, but the brain controls muscles. So, indirectly, it has a meaning to people.
Yeah. But, I mean, even in reading this paper, they talked about how the more skilled a player is, the simpler the movement is. So that's why I asked that question, because it sounded like, somebody who's not familiar with it or is just starting out or is trying to make some changes, that they haven't gotten into that, if I can just say, if they haven't gotten into that groove. But once they do and are comfortable with it, they've kind of built that in, it just kind of flows a lot easier. Mm-hmm. That kind of led to me to go, wait, is that muscle memory? Is that how that works?
It is memory, but it's just not muscle memory.
It's not the muscles.
It's movement. It's, how do you produce this movement or how do you get to that movement goal? It's just knowing.
So is it movement memory?
Closer. I think that's close. Yeah. But, golf is a game, as you said earlier, that, it's not reactive in the sense that you're not chasing a moving ball or another player out there, but, you decide when you're going to go for it. So, it's some combination of a move that hit a target, and therefore okay, it's a target I know how to do. I know how to make that. So yeah.
Fascinating.
But
Gabby?
you're right, Fred. The skill level plays an important role here. So also, we briefly mentioned it earlier, but when you're at a higher level of expertise, your external focus can be a little bit more distal, or can be something like, just the target or
something well away from your body.
Or
That's what you're talking about, distal. That's what that means. You choose a target way outside.
Or, it could be the trajectory, but when you're a novice, you may have to focus a little bit more on the swing path of the club or the ball. When you're more skilled, you can adopt a higher level at external focus if you want, if that makes sense. It could be at a greater distance from the body, but it could also be an image that kind of triggers the whole movement sequence, if you want, because it's there, you know how to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes, it does, actually. Thank you. Final thoughts. Gabby, you want to give us final thoughts on this? Instructions for our amateur golfer audience?
Oh, well, yeah.
And their instructors.
Final thoughts. We talked about these three factors that need to be present for optimal learning, yes, but also maybe we should point out that they all need to be present. And I say that because we have done studies, other people have done studies that really show that an external focus and autonomy and confidence have additive effects. So they all contribute a little bit to optimal performance. So just having an external focus is good, but not sufficient to really produce really good outcomes. So you want to have all three present. And again, you can do it yourself, or an instructor can help you achieve these conditions.
I think a good way to think about it is these rules apply to yourself. As you go out and practice in your own way, you can choose them, or you can kind of not think systematically. That's a choice. We all do it. But also, these rules apply to parents working with children, trying to get them to go ahead and learn a new motor skill. So, the parent that focuses on the positive is doing a whole lot more for the kid than one who is controlling, trying to do all the thinking for them, and perhaps being very critical. So, these are built into every kind of teaching or learning or performing situation. And you don't, unfortunately, you get one shot at bringing someone along in their skill at that point in time. So, I would encourage people to go ahead and choose one, start there, and then add another, because as Gabby said, they all count. They all add up. They have about the same effect from what we're seeing. So
I think that's an excellent example of that we can all relate to as far as training a child, and how positive feedback can really help. Gabby and Rebecca, thank you so much, and thanks to Rich for writing in and suggesting that you join me on the podcast today. It was I learned a lot more than I thought I was going to, and I'm really glad that I did. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks very much, Fred.
Thank you, Fred. It was fun talking with you.
Good shooting.
I've mentioned many times that a teacher once responded to my question of how do you get to be a good golfer with start when you're 6. Yeah, very funny, right? Well, let's break that down for a minute. What is it about golfers who've been playing their entire lives that makes them comfortable with their games that breed success? I'm starting to believe that it's because they don't think about their swings. It's like the old adage, it's like riding a bike. Well, do you have something that you were fairly proficient at when you were a kid that seems to be very easy to do as an adult, yet your contemporaries are amazed that you're able to do it? For me as a kid, I can do a backflip. I can do a front 1.5 off a diving board. And today, don't even think twice about when I can easily just do a backflip off the edge of a pool or off the side of a boat. Or in my yoga practice, I can do a headstand like I did when my older brother and I had competitions as little kids. Well, between this episode and last week's conversation with Jim Waldron, I've come to this huge revelation. Over the last few rounds, I've been very conscious of, like our guests today have explained, of making the choice of what to think about when I step up to the ball. External focus is the key. Whether I'm thinking about my breath, how my feet are connected to the ground, a mark 12 inches in front of the ball, or even an image of a distant target, I've made a huge effort to stop thinking about what or where I want my body to be during the swing. It's like the conversations we've had with Vision 54 teachers Lynn Marriott and Pia Nilsson about stepping behind the ball, locking in the parts of my swing I want to achieve, checking my line, then walking up to the ball and putting my focus elsewhere. What I remember them calling going from the thought box to the shot box. Or as Gabby just explained, external focus. Now, let's talk about the results. Well, I told you about a couple of weeks ago that I shot a 73. And this past weekend, I shot 75. And this also brings me back to many conversations we've had with mental game coaches about being in the zone. I now realize that I couldn't come up with any substantial answers about what I was thinking about when I reflect on being in the zone. They'll say, they've asked me, what were you thinking about? And I'm like, I draw a blank. Well, now I realize it's because I wasn't thinking about my swing or the ball. I was just letting my body do its thing. And I've also achieved something that was a long-term goal, which, while reviewing my scores over the last 20 rounds, there are no rounds in the 90s. My highest score is 86. There were 7 rounds in the 70s and 13 in the 80s. For the first time, my index has dropped below 8. So before you start sending me emails saying that it's not okay to refer to myself as a hacker, fine. But I do want to say that if it wasn't for the conversations and education that I've received from this podcast, I would still be shooting in the upper 80s to mid 90s. No doubt in my mind. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for upcoming episodes or topics of conversation, which is where a lot of this has come from Rich, a listener who wrote to me and said, what are you thinking about when you swing? And it's really gotten me going down this rabbit hole. Hey, please, I'd love to hear from you. Click on the Hey Fred button at GolfSmarter.com.